So this is lovely. Thank you so much for joining. And we're joining in the tape group. The world is new. And here it is, like the book of Joel. The world is new. And yeah, come on in. Welcome. So welcome on this Pentecost day. So there's, it's like a celebration of Spirit, of the Comforter that comes to us in the moment that we're open to receive it. Now we're going to let that be this moment. So this is your possibility for a Pentecost experience. And what is Pentecost? It's like receiving the Holy Spirit, suddenly discovering there's a flame on top of your head and a flame deep in your heart. And this flame is a beautiful light that is not yours. It is given you, but it's burning in you. And it's like a beautiful, warming, loving inspiration that works from within you. Now that is what I call an adventure. So the chapter that we're looking at today is Make Life an Adventure. It's chapter 7, I think. And make life an adventure, that sounds like, well, am I going to make my existence an adventure? Well, probably do, because if I'm, say, allowing Spirit to come to me, if I allow this Pentecost experience to come to me, then I've every, say, possibility for a life that is so adventurous that I had no idea about that it was even possible. Now that is what we celebrate here, and that's in fact the possibility. If you did not have an adventurous mind, you wouldn't be sitting here. So you have looked for different experience than the human experience, and you found your way in. You found a way to come in touch with something that goes way beyond your, say, limited idea of yourself, but something stirred within. And you recognize that to be, say, the opening of your consciousness in a truth that goes beyond compare, and a truth beyond your say, thoughts about it. It's literally like this blows your mind, and that is an adventurous journey. You cannot tell what is going to happen. You have no idea what will happen in the next moment. And instead of planning it and securing it like you would have done as a human being, you lay that aside and, say, come into the practice of the presence, which will direct you and, say, show you where to go on an instant by instant basis. So that is so amazing. That adventure is what we share here. So the adventure has nothing to do with place or time, or with a limited frame of reference, or with ideas of, say, longevity, or any of that. It's like, it has nothing to do with it. And this is really where the adventure is then. To discover that there's a possibility to leave that behind, the whole limited idea about yourself that you grew up with, that you have esteemed as real, but wasn't your reality at all. Now, stepping into a whole new experience of yourself, we start with coming to the deep silent altar within, to literally pray, to literally allow this communication to open up to us in a way that goes beyond comprehension. So this is the first step of the adventure today, is to step into that silence, into the recognition, into an opening up and letting that come to us as a real dear inspiration. So I prepared for that a meditation, and you will hear it in English and in French. Michelle was also, willing to help out here, and she spoke in the words in French. And so we're going to, Start with that. There is no God out here in space. The God there is hidden within us, waiting for each one of us to discover for himself. We do not have to go any place in time or space. The spiritual journey, the greatest of all adventures, is not made in time or space. It is a journey in consciousness, and this journey no one can make for us. I am content to relax in the assurance that thou art omniscience, all-knowing intelligence, divine, infinite, all love, and I can trust myself more to the infinite intelligence that governs this universe than I can to my own judgment as to what I need, or what I would like to do, or how I would like to live. Certainly, I can trust myself more to the care of divine love than I can to my own finite sense of love, which is not even as a grain of sand in comparison with the nature of that love, which is God.
Le Dieu qui existe est caché en nous, attendant que chacun de nous le découvre par lui-même. Nous n'avons pas besoin d'aller n'importe où, ou dans le temps, ou dans l'espace. Le voyage spirituel, la plus grande de toutes les aventures, ne se fait ni dans le temps, ni dans l'espace. C'est un voyage dans la conscience, et ce voyage, personne ne peut le faire à notre place. Je me contente de me détendre avec l'assurance que tu es omniscience, intelligence, omnisciente, divine, infinie, tout amour. Et je ne peux me fier davantage à l'intelligence infinie qui gouverne cet univers qu'à mon propre jugement quant à ce qui se passe. Ce besoin, ou ce que j'aimerais faire, ou comment j'aimerais vivre, certes, je peux me confier davantage aux soins de l'amour divin qu'à mon propre sens limité de l'amour, qui n'est même pas un grain de sable en comparaison de la nature de ce que l'amour, qui est Dieu.
Right. Thank you so much for joining in the meditation. And it was great to dive deeply into the silence, to say allow that to affect, to really come into a deep quiet in yourself. So that's so great. So it's an individual adventure. Like you actually do this by yourself. And in that, you can meet others like we do here, but it's still happening within you. Now, the amazing thing there is that it's like you can use the book like we do, and it can point in a direction, but the book cannot do it for you. Just like no name can do it for you. You see this these days with wherever you look for it, you see always like big names teaching truth, so to speak, but it has nothing to do with the big name. It has nothing to do with the personality. No, this is your affair. It has nothing to do with time and space and out there or any of those things. So this makes it a really beautiful, delicate, say, adventure for you. And in your discoveries, you share it automatically. In fact, by your discovery, you radiate it. You have discovered something. Now, this has set you free, and that is what you radiate into this world. You could say that is in fact sufficient. It is not about that. It is really about you discovering that it's in you and that everything is given you without limitation. Now, this is great. So make life an adventure, as Joel says in the chapter, has nothing to do with time and space, as we read in the parenthesis. But like here, it says, like, if you keep repeating the human thread of mind, you could say, is like circling of mind that's occurring as a human being. You get up in the morning, you go to work, or you do whatever you do, and you come back at night and relax a little bit, and then you go to sleep and you start the same day the next day. So like, that is not what this is about. It's not becoming say a really well oiled human robot, so to speak. No, that's not what this says. It's like Joel says, like all the habits and all the say set patterns are not going to avail you in that sense. It is not going to set you free. Now, there's always say something going on with that, because you need a certain sense of patterns, I guess, until you can let go of them. So in other words, it gives you temporary safety, but you will let go of it. And especially when you practice the presence and come into deeper experiences of recognition and realization in God, in your prayer, you could say, that shifts everything around, because you want more of that. You see what the value of that is for you, and how that determines how you feel during the day. That it has nothing to do with anything anymore. At least at a certain point you come to the recognition, it doesn't have to do with anything outside of me anymore. I can stay right here, and there's in fact nothing that can take that away from me, because this is my safety and security. And I allow that to speak and to react for me, instead of that I'm, say, occupying myself with trying to make it all work, trying to fix it, trying to do whatever I think I need to do. Like all the human laws will go upside down. All the things that you're so used to, that give you a sense of safety or comfort, will fall apart. They will not. They are not forever, you could say. So now what is forever about you? And here's an interesting thing. Maybe I should talk about that a little bit. It's like, we're talking here about eternity. Now, eternity might not sound directly as a very attractive idea. And especially not when you think of eternity as you would think about time. Like, eternity sounds like a very long time with your human ears, but that's not what that is. So to have, to come into a new experience that would be forever, you make that very big for yourself, in the sense of, well, I have to be 100% sure what I'm choosing for, because I will be stuck in it. That can be like a subconscious or conscious reasoning that you do for yourself. So in other words, eternity has nothing to do with time. It's not a very long time. It is not an endless time. And this comes very close to the idea of infinite way. This is not an infinite way to God. It is not going to take forever to get to God, so to speak. So that needs to be very clear here. So this is an infinite way of being, and this being is already you, and this comes to your consciousness, and say, because when you exercise sufficient practicing the presence, you know that in order to receive the communication, the communion with God, you need to get out of the way with your ideas and concerns and all these cares that you have. You step aside, then say this communication can come to you. There is just no other way. And then you will see that this is an infinite way of being. It was always with you, and it will be always with you. Now, Joel describes this in this chapter a couple of times in small meditations that he gives, or contemplations. So we're certainly going to read those. So I'm starting with sharing some of the expressions of Joel in this specific chapter. Make Life an Adventure is the title of the chapter. So I start with some expressions that are in the chapter and that have to do with spirit. On this Pentecost day, it's like spirit is not something separate and apart from the form it assumes. Like spirit is not something separate and apart from the form it assumes. Spirit is the substance, and the form is its manifestation. Therefore, if truth appears in or as our consciousness, if truth appears in or as the spirit of our being, it must also appear as manifested form. Now, what is Joel actually trying to tell us here? Say, spirit is not something separate and apart from the form it assumes. Now, I'm going to say, give this to you in a bit of a different way, because here it sounds like Joel is looking for a way to implement spirit into form, like the spiritual into form, bringing the spiritual into a three-dimensional idea. And of course that cannot be true, because the three-dimensional way that we look with our eyes is the five senses, it's like mesmerism, has nothing to do. It's temporal, it's objective, like they're separate objects with a name, and it seems to be not in direct relationship with us. Now, what does Joel mean then here with when spirit comes into form? How does that work? And this is what came to me to share, and that is this. There's like, in fact, the manifestations of spirit, that is something we can understand. Just like, for instance, the flames on the top of the hat during the Pentecost moment described in the Bible. It's like it comes in a recognizable form. Suddenly you see a person with a flame on his head, or a dove, or a who knows what. But anyway, there's a symbol, there's an appearance of a form that clearly implies the presence of spirit. Now, my experience with that is this. It's like spirit manifests itself in a form that you can receive. And that can be like we just did. The music with the words, with the visual, suddenly bring you into an upliftment. It's like, wow, that is so great. I don't know what this is, but I love this. Like suddenly my heart lifts up. I feel that there's a love that goes beyond comprehension. And it is literally a spirit coming down into my experience of myself. Now, does that have a form? No. Does it stir you? Yes, absolutely. It stirs you from within. So spirit is not like some kind of separate thing that comes to you. No, it is a manifestation within you from, in fact, the bridge between God and you. It's like it gives you the access to a deep contact with God in the way that you can receive it. Now that changes. In your spiritual development, that changes. First, it might be much more in forms of appearances even. Like the right person showing up, telling you about this, the teacher showing up. These are the works of spirit, of course. It's like you ask for it, so it's not separate from you, but it does come to you in a way that you can receive it. Suddenly these words resonate with you in a way that you had no idea about. This is the way of spirit. Now this comes to you this way. Suddenly you start to become acquainted with an idea of opening your consciousness to the light within, and see that you can actually communicate. Well, that is the work of spirit. So it comes into form, even into your physicality. It changes your body. Now you cannot ignore that. That is not coming by your doing, but really by inspiration. Suddenly you start to write poetry that you have never dreamt about ever writing. That is pure inspiration coming to you from spirit. Like all these expressions come to you in a way that you can receive it and you can actually accept it. And it is so individual how that comes to you. It's unbelievable. So basically, there is no doing on your part connected to that. It is always you receiving it, being open to it. Suddenly that experience comes to you. By you opening up, you in fact open up to whole new situations that literally were not there a moment ago. Now these are the works of spirit, because in space and time, even though it seems like a prison house, it seems like everything is set in stone, it is material, it is defined, it is limited. None of that is so. So it is it looks like a limitation, but don't let yourself be fooled by appearances. Will Joel tell you too? It's like, no, none of that is fixed. No, it can change in an instant. So literally, the form that you, say, assume to be fixed and defined and a real prison to you where you could never escape out, can be overcome in an instant, in the blink of an eye. You could say in biblical terms, like in a blink of an eye, it can change into a pure inspiration that literally shifts the whole situation. Now this you start to come more and more into, and this is really what Joel also means with an adventurous life. He had no idea where he would live, and suddenly he finds himself in Los Angeles. Suddenly he finds himself in Hawaii. Suddenly he finds himself with other persons around him, in South Africa, in London, in wherever he was. Like he exemplified that very well. He had no idea about the next day. He thought he started his office even like this. It's like, yeah, he had no idea. But he started it. It was just a table and a chair. That was sufficient to have his practice. Did he have any idea what he would cause in the walk of days? No. Was it the work of spirit coming into form? Well, it was complete inspiration. Up to today, we use that as an example of how that will work in our life in our individual way. Now that is so lovely about this. So this is what Joel means then with the idea of spirit coming into form. Otherwise you think that suddenly your cup is starting to dance on the table, and which is very well possible too if it is inspirited, but it would have a very specific function for you. It would be the way for you to receive that there is something else going on, instead of thinking that it has to do with some kind of magic, which of course does not exist. So I'm sharing with you the next ideas. So spirit is not something separate and apart from the form it assumes. In other words, it's also not separate and apart from you as you see yourself. Even in that, it is connecting with you. You feel inspiration. You feel that you're being touched by music that you hear or by words that are coming to you. God is the law of the universe. God is the substance of the universe. And my oneness with God makes me a law unto my universe, unto my world. God, the invisible God, is the individual law unto my being through my own state of consciousness. God, the indivisible God, is the individual law unto my being through my own state of consciousness. Like, that's where I receive it. This was an adventure in consciousness. God is the substance of the universe. And my oneness with God makes me a law unto my universe, unto my world. The totality of God appears as individual you and me. You are the truth, all the life, all the immortality of God. And so am I, Joel says. You are the truth, all the life, all the immortality of God. And so am I. You cannot be more life than life itself. You always have existed and always will exist. You cannot be more immortal than immortality. Either you are all truth, or you're not truth at all. So these are just some expressions from the book. I will read some more because there are many expressions in there, even though this is, I think, the smallest chapter. But I will read some of it. So chapter 7 from the book. Here's one thing that I love to read. We will be in the world, even though we will not always be of the world. This work is not meant to take anybody out of the world or to make anybody an ascetic or a hermit. On the contrary, it is meant to make us the light of the world, and that light has no right ever to be hidden. The real purpose of all our work is to come into the conscious awareness of God's presence, but that purpose must first be made a matter of decision before it can be carried out. So it's like the real purpose of all our work is to come into conscious awareness of the presence of God, but that purpose must first be made a matter of decision before it can be carried out. Like in other words, you have to experience it for yourself. Otherwise, what are you doing? You're in fact sharing the idea or the concepts of it instead of experiencing it yourself. And Joel says, no, in our work it is like we receive it ourselves. But see, I love it what Joel says here. It's like we're not going to hide ourselves in the mountains, in a cave in the mountains and meditate for 30 years. There is nothing wrong by doing so, but no, it's like this happens in the marketplace. This happens exactly in the place where you find yourself. So you don't need to change your life circumstances or your job or your whatever, wherever you find yourself. You don't need to change that in order to fulfill your purpose. That's what Joel says. Now that is really good to know, isn't it? It's like you do that. You have every opportunity to share exactly where you find yourself. But then your adventure begins, because it is not about doing the same thing in the place that you're familiar with. No, you can find yourself completely relying on the inspiration that you get by being present, by taking time, even when you work. So, even though while you're doing things, it doesn't mean that you cannot be, say, in communication with your Creator, with God. No, that continuously goes on by your choice. Like you can choose to be open to receive that inspiration continuously, It is not only when you meditate. It is not only when you sit down in quiet. No, are you kidding? No, you take this wherever you go. And who knows how that will be expressed by you, in what way and whenever. But see, the recognition of you in doing this work will be that you carry that light or this glow inside with you. And that starts to radiate through your pores, you could say. That starts to shine out of your eyes. That will give you a different response to the circumstances that you find yourself in. That will open up new situations that nobody had ever dreamed about, that are suddenly possible just by you having an open consciousness. Now this is how you can be the light of the world. And why not give it to the world? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. It is not that you have to enclose yourself in as a hermit into a little room or a big castle or a monastery in order for this to work this out. No, you take this with you, and by extending it to your brother, you make it stronger for everyone, for yourself, for your brother. And that is so lovely. Like, for a healing practice, you don't need a place. You take that with you wherever you go. Let me see. I'll watch the time a little bit. Oh yeah, here. I, of mine own self, am nothing. God is the allness of me, the mind, the life, and the soul of me. God is the sum total of me. God is the substance of my body, the actual substance of my body. See, and that is something like, yeah, that's an interesting expression, isn't it? Like he actually tells you literally about your body. And what I said before too is like you start to receive this, and this is a physical experience too. It changes your physicality. So it is like allowing this moment of communication to come to you in the morning or during the day, when you sit still for a moment or when you're doing other things. Suddenly you come into a moment of gratitude, of feeling grace coming down, feeling your heart being lifted up. Like, these are all occurrences that start to happen more and more when you allow them to occur. When you allow the space in your consciousness not to be preoccupied with your own situation, like, how am I supposed to deal with all the problems that I'm perceiving? Like, you can't solve them anyway. The problems when you perceive them is in a place that isn't real. So they're not solvable. You can occupy your mind with it, and you will, but there's no necessity for that. There's no need for that. Because it's like, by your, say, acceptance of this light in this moment, by you being present here and now, everything can open up. And everything can change in an instant. Now, that is starting your adventure, your consciousness adventure. You give that away by demonstrating it, by receiving that for yourself. Now that is for you and for your brother. Okay, so now the next part of this adventure today is that we're going to listen to Joel, and that is an interesting talk. Contemplative Meditation is the title of it, but Joel is basically, I would say, pounding on your consciousness, like, don't forget this, don't forget that, God is this, God is that, God is that. So it's like, oh well, yeah, let's stir that up, let's allow that to affect us. And Joel does a great job in doing so. Now in this tape, the first maybe 10 or 15 seconds or maybe half a minute or so are the audio is in bad shape, you could say. I try to make the best of it, but it's still not too well. But that changes while the tape is continuing, so no worries there. All right, so we're going to listen to Joel and see you right after that.
Let us this morning experience God's grace. Let us make ourselves receptive and responsive to the experience of God. Let us admit God into our consciousness. And in this wise, even with our eyes closed, we will embrace the universe within ourselves, the whole universe. And we will realize that this universe of God's creating is within us. And that God's love enfolds it, upholds it, and all who are therein. God's love permeates this universe. And all that exists in this universe, God created. And it is spiritual. Just as the Master said, "Why callest thou me good? There is none good except the Father in heaven." So we will know that in this universe there is nothing good or bad. All that exists is of God, and God is the good unto this universe. Whoever it is, wherever it is, whatever it is, we will see it as neither good nor evil, but as wholly spiritual, of God. The good which is God permeates it. Maintains and sustains it. Every individual embraced in our consciousness, we understand to be the Son of God, the child of God, the offspring of God, God's own creation. And of it also we will not say that it is good or that it is evil, nor that he is good nor evil, nor that she is good or evil, but rather that all those embraced in the spiritual universe are of God, and therefore spiritual. We will not place the word good or the word evil on anybody. We will not label anybody good or evil. We will not label any condition good or evil, even at this moment, as some form of physical, mental, moral, or financial discord comes into your thought. Unlabel it. Take off the label of good or evil and see it as merely a condition that exists, but that a condition that exists, not good and not evil, and then have it translated into that which it is, and you will behold a harmony, a health, where heretofore there has been discord or disease. Watch this with your eyes closed watch this, nothing is good and nothing is evil. Begin with this moment and continue for the next weeks and months to come to remember that there is neither good nor evil in this world, and we will place no labels of good and evil upon anyone or anything. The reason is that we acknowledge God to be the only good, and all that exists partakes of God's goodness. And evil has no existence. Regardless of any appearance that may be in your thought at this moment, evil has no existence. Only God and the formations of God have existence. And these we will call neither good nor evil. Remember, it is a state of duality to behold good and evil. Remember that nothing exists in all of this world that is good or evil. It becomes good or evil in proportion to your thinking it so. And so something that is very good to you becomes very evil to your neighbor. Something that is very evil to your neighbor is very good to you. And the reason is that there is neither good nor evil in anything in and of itself. But your thinking can make it so unto you. And then not as a reality, but as an illusory experience which will certainly seem real and painful and harmful and destructive to those who entertain thoughts of evil and destruction. Now this calls for a rebirth on your part and on my part. It means that you are going to consciously make the agreement with me now that in this whole world of men, women, and children, in this whole world of conditions, there is neither good nor evil. God alone is good, and God's goodness permeates all that exists. There is no evil in any condition. There is no evil in any circumstance. There is no evil in any person, because God, the infinite good, has not created evil, and there is no other creator. If we have entertained an evil sense of some person or condition, let us, in this morning of purification, let us purify ourselves of such beliefs. In all of this world, there is not an evil person or condition, meaning there is not a person or condition that has within itself any powers of evil. Regardless of what you may look upon, regardless of what its appearance at this moment to you, you will remove its sting. You will remove its seeming destructive nature when you look upon the person or condition and say within yourself, you have no powers of evil, for there are none. I have heretofore mislabeled you. The world has mislabeled you. And it says that you are evil, dangerous, destructive, And now I know it isn't so. I know that in all the universe, there is no person or thing or condition that has any quality of evil in it, or any power of evil, or any power of destruction. It is neither good nor evil, for only God is good. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for there is no evil in that condition. There is no evil presence and no evil power. Though I seem to be consumed with disease, I will no longer fear it, for it has within itself no element of destruction, no element of pain, no element of death. It is in and of itself nothingness, since all power is in God. I will not say of this condition that it is good, nor will I say of it that it is evil. I will say merely it is nothingness. God is allness. Everything else is nothingness. And God's allness and God's goodness and God's power and God's law permeates me, this universe, all being and all conditions. Heretofore, we have lived in a world of two powers. We have tried to acquire a good power. We have tried to get rid of an evil power. And now we will do neither. We will rest content in that which is. We will rest content in the realization that apart from God, there is no power. Apart from God, there is no good. But God's omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence assures that God's good permeates all being, all cause, all effect. I will not judge by appearances, and I will withhold all judgment as to good or evil, and merely acknowledge that God alone is the good. Even this that I have been fearing is not evil. Even this that I have been hating is now evil. Even this that I have been wondering why it came to my dwelling place, even now I know it is not evil. It has no qualities of evil. And he or she has no qualities of evil. Or of good, since God alone is good. This will lead you out of the world of duality, out of the age-old mistake of having a power of God and a power of devil, or a power of good and a power of evil, or a power of immortal and a power of mortal. This will lead you into the fourth dimensional consciousness in which there is nothing either good or evil, where all that is receives its grace, glory, power, substance, cause, and law from God. Nothing is good, nothing is evil. All that is of God and therefore spiritual, above qualities, above quantities. Into the realm of God there is neither quality nor quantity. There is only infinity, eternality, immortality. A divine state of being which has no opposites, is neither good nor evil, but is spiritual. The miracles of grace come into our experience in proportion as we withdraw judgments, labels from the world of men and women, conditions, things, and circumstances, and no longer speak the language of good or evil, no longer speak the language of comparisons, but recognize God as the creative principle of all, and therefore all is spiritual. It is not what goes into the mouth that defileth or maketh a lie, but that which emanates from your own consciousness. You will never again be able to blame a person, a circumstance, or a condition for the inharmonies of your life, because you will recognize that it is nothing that goes into your experience that defileth or maketh a lie, nothing that man whose breath is in his nostril can do to you that maketh a lie, but rather what emanates from your consciousness. If you persist in living in the world of duality and having some things good and some things bad, then that bread which you have cast on the waters returns to you. And as you have cast the bread of duality, so the bread of duality returns unto you. But if you retire to the rear of your own consciousness and look out at this world and say, I withdraw all labels from you. I no longer see you as good or evil. I see you as of God. And I see God's goodness permeate you. I see God's goodness uphold you, sustain you. I see the law of God keep you in perfect peace. I do not give you labels of good or evil. No good or evil emanates from my consciousness. Only the vision of God's spiritual perfection, maintaining a spiritual universe in eternal glory, and having no glory of its own, but showing forth God's glory. God's handiwork. The heavens declare the glory of God. The earth showeth forth his handiwork. And so you see, we have no glory of our own, but it is God's glory. And so you may not call it good, you may not call it evil, you must call it spiritual of God. God's grace does not remove disease. God's grace reveals to us that there never has been disease, that we have accepted the world's concept of good and evil, and therefore we have demonstrated that. Now, in our spiritual enlightenment, we will no longer label anything disease. We will no longer label anything evil. We will no longer believe that any condition has in itself a power of evil, of destruction, or of pain, since all power emanates from God. We will no longer believe that there is a law of disease, since all law is spiritual. There is no good law and evil law. There is only one law, spiritual law, the law of God, which governs God's creation, and there is no other creation. All that is made, God made. And God saw all that he made, and it is very good. Therefore, we must not be deceived by appearances and be tempted into saying, but this is evil, but this is error, but this is discord, and we must get rid of it or rise above it. No, no, no. We must come into the glory of God and realize God made all that was made. And all that was made is maintained and sustained by its creative principle, which is God. And regardless of appearances, to my misguided senses, I will label nothing good, I will label nothing evil, I will label all things spiritual of God. This spiritual vision will result in the translating of these false appearances into an understanding of the divine harmony which is ever present. When you go to the altar to pray, there remember that any man has aught against thee, first get up, make peace with thy brother, then return to the altar with thy gifts. And so, if at any time you attempt to pray or commune with God, and remember that you are holding anything in your consciousness as being good or evil, stop right there and make peace within yourself by agreeing nothing is good or evil. Only God is good, and the infinity of God's goodness permeating all being leaves nothing of an evil or destructive nature. Then when you have made peace, so that you are not warring within yourself against a person, a thing, or a condition, then you may return to your meditation and your communion and say, Father, I come to you with clean hands. I have naught against anyone, and I do not accept anyone or anything as evil. Therefore, no one and no thing has anything against me. And so now I am in thy presence in my spiritual purity. I am entertaining no evil concept of person or thing or condition. I am at peace with all creation. And then in that state of spiritual purity, the grace of God is enabled to permeate your mind, your soul, your being, your body, and your pocketbook. The grace of God is enabled to flow in a consciousness that is not divided against itself. The grace of God is enabled to flow in a consciousness that is not at war with anyone or anything. God's grace is enabled to flow through a consciousness that is single-pointed, that has only one presence, one power, no opposite, no opposition. Then is prayer answered. But while we have aught against someone, or someone has aught against us, that means while we are beholding someone or something as having evil qualities or propensities, while we believe that there is a world of duality, and someone or something is evil, has evil, can cause or produce evil, we are a house divided against itself. We are a state of consciousness at war within ourselves, and the grace of God cannot reveal itself in such a divided household. Now we must be of single mind. We must see with a single eye. And to do that, we must withdraw the labels of good and evil from everything there is and acknowledge all good to be God. God alone to be good. If you vest anything with the power of evil, that is the only evil it has to react upon you. When you withdraw the label of evil, since it has no powers of evil within itself, there are no longer any appearances of evil or beliefs of evil to react upon you. A belief of evil entertained in your consciousness reacts upon you. As you sow, so shall you reap. If you entertain a sense of evil to a person, place, thing, circumstance, or condition, that sense of evil which you entertain is the sense of evil which returns to harm your being, your body, your business. When you relinquish all sense of evil, when you refuse to vest anything with powers of evil, then your consciousness is purged of all sense of evil, and there is no longer a sense of evil to operate in you, upon you, through you, or against you. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And it doesn't really mean think. It means in his heart. It means as he is convinced in his consciousness. Whatever consciousness he entertains, that's what he draws unto himself. Therefore, do not entertain any consciousness, any awareness or sense of evil. Then none can react upon you. Cast your bread upon the waters. Cast your understanding of oneness upon the waters. Cast your understanding of God's grace as sufficiency upon the waters. Cast your realization of God as the all-good upon the waters, and these will return to you.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you so much. So if you come to the acceptance of what Joel is sharing and what is saying and is pointing at, then in fact your adventure begins. So that's the relationship with the idea of adventure that we carry with us today or are inspired by today. It's an idea of adventure. Like, this isn't heavy, this isn't difficult, this is a matter of willingness to allow something, it's like our lives, to be different, to in fact accept this and practice this, and being willing to give up our ideas about good and evil and give that away. It's like, well, I'm not using that anymore. Apparently that gives no information and is absolutely not helpful for any one of us. So in that, now my consciousness is free. And when I come into the altar, as Joel says, when I start meditating and I recognize that I still walk around with a grievance against someone, I first make peace with that. I first let go of that idea and return back so that the possibilities open, like it can come to me, that my consciousness can be filled with the love of God, with the grace of God. Now that is where the adventure begins. So it's like amazing opportunities here for acceptance, for coming into a whole new experience of yourself, of self-judgment, release of self-judgment, release of judgment of any kind of occurrence in the world, release of any idea that you hold that is limiting you as your own belief, but in fact opening all doors for the imprisoned splendor to escape. Now that is an adventure. So I want to thank you so much for being part of this tape group today, being here, being present in this meeting, or when you watch this on YouTube. It's really great. Come and join us. It's a great adventure that we're on by just recognizing this, that it's happening in you, and that in fact by your acceptance and discovery of this, you give it away to your brother at the same time. So thank you so much for that. And in the meeting we still play a song, but I want to thank you for your presence and see you soon. Thank you so much.